animal sacrifice for Allah in a place where sacrifice is made for other than Allah. The next chapter is باب لا يذبح لله بمكان يذبح فيه لغير الله. That it's not permissible for you to slaughter for the sake of Allah purely, but in a place that people used to slaughter there for the sake of other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To that extent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting the Tawhid and the oneness of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Although people are doing it only for the sake of Allah, and they don't care if it's the place was used for slaughtering for other than Allah, but their intention is they're doing it only for the sake of Allah and nothing else. But still it's forbidden for them to do it in a place that used to be used to slaughter for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to protect the Tawhid. Anything that would lead to matters of shirk, you would find that the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, things will become forbidden, because it's the most virtuous, the most important thing in one's life. Cutting all the leads that can undermine the Tawhid, it's something that is important.
Like say for instance, back home when I do the slaughter and everything like that, like the land that we do slaughter and the people will not slaughter they will just slaughter just to eat the food, not for any like religious kind of matter or anything like that. Would that still be?
No, that's okay.
That's okay.
Right, and actually the hadith would show in the verses. For example, it says this is chapter 11, باب لا يذبح لله, and this is inshallah would be the last chapter. باب لا يذبح لله بمكان يذبح فيه لغير الله وقول الله تعالى لا تقم فيه أبدا لمسجد أسس على التقوى من أول يوم أحق أن تقوم فيه رجال يحبون أن يتطهروا والله يحب المطهرين, which means never stand you therein, verily the mosque whose foundation was laid from the first day on piety is more worthy that you stand therein to pray. In it are men who love to clean and to purify themselves, and Allah loves those who make themselves clean and pure. And this is again, it's depending on the verse or on the chapter before it. And again, you see the title: the make no animal sacrifice for Allah in a place where sacrifice is made for other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this verse, it shows that when the Prophet ﷺ was forbidden of making salah in a masjid that is built on the sin and on other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it comes to the salah, that means since salah and dabh, they both go together, فَصَلِّ رَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, as we mentioned before. And in the verse, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي وَنُسُكِي, my salah and my nusuk, they both go together. So the same way the Prophet ﷺ was forbidden to make salah on a masjid that is being established on the sin, the same thing, he should not slaughter in a place where there used to be people slaughtering on other than Allah. And the hadith after that would make it even clearer. It shows also the virtues of praying with those who are righteous, as it's mentioned in the verse, and affirming the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the importance of having tahara and wudu, and anything that would lead to shirk, you would find it that it's something that is forbidden. The hadith clearly states that. عن ثابت ibn.Abdul-Wahhab رضي الله عنه said: نذر رجل أن ينحر إبلا ببوانة فسأل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال: هل كان فيها وثن من أوثان الجاهلية يعبد؟ قالوا لا. قال: فهل كان فيها عيد من أعيادهم؟ قالوا لا. فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: أوف بنذرك فإنه لا وفاء لنذر في معصية الله ولا فيما لا يملك ابن آدم. Which means a man made a vow to sacrifice a camel at a place called Buwana. So he asked the Prophet ﷺ about it. He said, did the place, the Prophet ﷺ asked him, pay attention to this. He said, did the place have any idol which is worshipped of the idols of Jahiliyyah? They answered no. The Prophet ﷺ asked again, did the disbelievers hold any of their recurring festivities there? They answered no. Allah's Messenger ﷺ then said, fulfill your vow. Verily there is no fulfilling of a vow made in disobedience to Allah, nor one that is beyond a person's capacity. And this hadith is reported by Al-Bukhari or Muslim. So the hadith clearly shows this is a matter of nadhr. Nadhr, a vow. A person makes something that is obligatory on him when it wasn't. Right? If Allah cure me, I would do this. This is, in that context, some ulama they said it's not permissible, and some said that it's very disliked. right? If a person wants to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a matter, as the Prophet ﷺ said, in the meaning of which, that it gets from the miser, gets him to give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But for the believer, if something good happens to him, and he slaughter for the sake of Allah, or give charity, or whatever there is, mashallah, this is something good. So the nadr, a man had this vow to slaughter a camel in a certain particular place. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, which shows clearly that it's not permissible if one of these things that the Prophet ﷺ asked would be there. Although he made the nadr, the vow, to slaughter it in that particular place. But if that particular place people were slaughtering for other than Allah, then it's not permissible. Although he had the nadr, then in that case what he should do, he should not fulfill his nadr because of that. And also shows how the Prophet ﷺ asking him, before giving him the verdict, he would ask him first to make sure that he would make the matter very clear. And that slaughtering, a Muslim slaughtering in a place where the disbelievers, they take the place as a place of festivities, is not permissible. A place of festivities, or a place that they worship there other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they slaughter other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nadr al-ma'siyah, to make a vow to commit a sin, also is not permissible, as is mentioned in the hadith. That if it's something that a person have no capacity and no means to do it, if, for example, says, as the ulama that mentioned this example always, he would say on me, a vow on me that I would free the slave of so and so. He's not his slave. That means he have no power to free someone else's slave, right? So when he take this as a vow upon himself, it's not something that is in his capacity. That means he cannot do it. Which means that if the vow isn't something that is permissible, then it becomes obligatory, and the nadr or the vow is ibadah that has to be done only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that case, if a person is not able to fulfill his vow, then he will expiate for this vow as if he would expiate for an oath, by feeding 10 people or clothing them. If he's not able, then fasting 3 days. But again, it's mandatory, of course, to fulfill one's vow. But the point of the hadith with the chapter, slaughtering in a place that people would slaughter there for other than the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or they used to do that to protect the matters of the Tawhid, because slaughtering is an act of worship. And this is the end of chapter 11, inshallah. And we stop at this point.